One of the reasons why this hasn't stopped, and I absolutely believe historians, and non-historians are going to look back on this and say, how was this allowed to happen? How did the entire civilized Western world stand by while a genocide and massacres of this sick, cruel, enduring nature were allowed to take place? How did European governments keep sending arms with mealy-mouthed statements? One of the reasons is because the Democrats, who of course didn't object to this very often with a few exceptions because it was Joe Biden presiding over it. At least now it's Donald Trump's war, so even the partisans hack should be. But so many of them are just programmed to say nothing, to avoid saying anything potentially controversial, to deviate from DC bipartisan doctrine that they've been told forever they can't challenge. And there's a big reason why Trump continues to beat them is because Trump never had that. Trump never had the idea that, I can't question pieties. I can't draw out of the lines. I have to stay afraid that I might say one word wrong that's not presidential. And if you want to see the living embodiment of the soulless, frightened, craven, principle-free Democratic Party, I give you one Pete Buttigieg, who was on Pod Save America, a party podcast, remember, filled with former Obama operatives, speechwriters, and advisors. And they are way more out there when it comes to the war in Gaza. Tommy Vietor, who was President Obama's advisor of national security on his National Security Council, he has been like that from the beginning. But John Farrell and John Levin and some of these other, Ben Rhodes, some of these other more cautious people who weren't that critical of Biden for doing this, though they were somewhat, have really gotten very much out there now. And so Pete Buttigieg is on a show where even the very establishment mainstream of the Democratic Party, can't get more established mainstream than Pod Save America, is way out there on Israel, demanding all weapons cutoffs and using very emotional language to do it, as I think is appropriate. He goes on their show and they ask him, there was just a vote on cutting off arms sales to Israel, sponsored by Bernie Sanders. Half the Democratic Senate caucus voted yes. How would you have voted? And this is what he said. I would have had more respect for him if he just said, no, I'm not going to cut off arms for Israel. But he couldn't even answer the question and instead spouted this completely just calculated, scripted, vapid, vacant, dead-eyed response. Let's watch it.
More than half of Senate Democrats just voted to oppose the sale of over $500 million worth of U.S. bombs and guns to Israel. Would you have voted to oppose sending those weapons?
I think we need to insist that if American taxpayer funding is going to weaponry that is going to Israel, that is not going to things that shock the conscience. And look, we see images every day that shock the conscience. So much of this is complicated. But what's not complicated is that if a child is starving because of a choice made by a government, that is unconscionable. And I think especially including voices who care about Israel, who believe in Israel's right to exist, who have stood with Israel in response to the unbelievable cruelty and terrorism of October 7th. I think there's a reason why so many of those voices are speaking up now too. Because this is not just something that is on its face and in itself a moral catastrophe.
All right, so I don't even know what to say about that. I feel like it speaks for itself. If you can't see what a scheming, just vacant, non-human Pete Buttigieg is, what a career striver he is, how he basically will always work at McKinsey, a firm that just creates spreadsheets for how power centers can profit off the suffering and misery of others, where everybody's just a number except for them. That's what Pete Buttigieg is. And so much of the Democratic Party in the age of Obama became this very technocratic, passionless, just like the managers of the status quo and imperial decline, because that's what Obama was. He seemed so full of passion when the con man did such a good job in 2006, 7, and 8 of giving these very moving speeches, which he did. He was of great order, no denying that. And then he got into office and he basically became part of the DC mob that he vowed to overturn within about 3 seconds. And he was just a technocrat. That's pretty much it. And his elevation has given rise to this exact kind of person. It's like Pete Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, obviously, is that. By far the worst and weakest part of her campaign was that no one had any idea what she believed in because she never said what she believed in because she was too frightened by what consultants were telling her not to say anything that might offend anybody. Cory Booker, Beto O'Rourke, all these kind of people who are just mealy-mouthed about everything. And like I said, if this were confined to the left, I would still judge Pete Buttigieg morally, but politically it's so stupid too. Here's what Ben Rhodes, again, this was President Obama's, one of his top national security officials. And this is what Ben Rhodes said after they had Pete Buttigieg, a highly touted future presidential candidate of the Democratic Party, for some reason that I don't understand other than the fact that he's gay and they like that. They had a woman in 2016, and then they played it safe with Biden, and then a black woman in 2020, and so a black Indian woman, and at some point they're going to have a gay candidate. It's just what they do to pretend that they're changing something, even though all these people are the most status quo perpetuating and defending individuals you could possibly find on the planet. Even Ben Rhodes is willing to condemn Pete Buttigieg, a precious little star of the Democratic Party, after he came on their podcast. And this is what he said, quote, "Pete is a smart guy and I admire a lot of what he's done, but I have absolutely no idea what he thinks based on these answers. Just tell us what you believe." They cannot tell you what they believe because Pete Buttigieg spends all his time with large donors of the Democratic Party. Many of them are deeply pro-Israel. That's the secret to keeping both parties captive to Israel. These are people he wants and needs to fund his presidential campaign, and he cannot come and say, "I want to cut off arms to Israel." On the other hand, he knows that the vast majority of the Democratic base, the people whose votes he actually needs, are disgusted with Israel and are done financially subsidizing Israel. So he has to pretend and feign this kind of concern that he doesn't have for the humanitarian suffering in Gaza, but he also can't offend his donors. And that's exactly what all these Democrats are. Most of them are. And then they can't figure out why everybody hates them. That's the reason. And it's amazing. It's like there are members of the Republican Party who say, "Look, I'm standing by Israel to the last second. I don't care how many people in Palestine die. I don't care how many Gazans we kill. I don't care how the rest of the world hates the United States because they believe they're a genocide. Our fundamental religious duty or our political duty is to stand by Israel no matter what." Lindsey Graham says that. Tom Cotton says that. Mike Huckabee says that. The ADL says that. AIPAC says that. It's despicable, but I at least can give them credit and respect the fact that they say what they think. Democratic Party politicians are petrified of their own shadow. And that's why they're just such an ineffective force in American politics and deserve to be. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.